Congresswoman Van Duyne joins us now via Skype. Good to see you. This is a full-page ad that ran in the New York Post. I'm sure I wouldn't be shocked if they got a ton of response off this, honestly.
I hope so. And it was
full-page
guess
ad.
what? Y'all come to Texas because we see the way that you're being treated in New York, and it's disgraceful. You've got politicians that are not enforcing the laws, as you mentioned. They're not even allowing citizens to protect themselves. They're going after people who are just trying to protect their homes or protect their property or protect others on a subway. They're going after them. But they're letting the violent criminals out. They're letting the violent illegal immigrants that beat police officers midday, they're letting them out the next day. They are constantly talking about defunding the police and how horrible the police are. And my point is, if you put your head, out there every day, you're putting your neck on the line. You don't know if you're going to come home. If you're a police officer, you've got no idea what you're going to be dealing with. You're doing that, and then you are getting thrown under the bus by the very representatives that claim to represent you. If you guys are having to put up with that, which we're seeing on a regular basis on TV, come to Texas, where we're going to revere you, where we have respect for our police officers, where we actually defend you, and we allow you to do your job, which is protecting citizens and enforcing laws. Come on down. We'd love to have you.
I love that. And you're right. I mean, this is, of course, coming right off of the funeral services of New York police officer Jonathan Diller. I mean, that was just heartbreaking to hear, his family talk about his service to the community. And then ultimately, he ends up being killed by the same lawlessness that the politicians in New York are promoting. And I know there are several New York officers that have lost their lives like that. Whereas when you look how they're treated in New York compared to how officers seem to be treated in Texas. Everybody, I mean, we get along with our law enforcement. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't, black, white, Asian in Texas, who isn't getting along with law enforcement. But it's also, I think, a culture of politicians do not bend that knee to that restorative justice, at least outside of Dallas County, I should say.
Well, let's not go too far south in Austin either at one point in time. But they're trying to make up for it now, because they've seen what happens to these policies when you're not enforcing the laws. People want to have safe streets. They want to have a community that they feel like they can walk around in, that they can bring up a family, that their kids can go to school and not be attacked, where you can be a woman on the street and not be threatened by a random person punching you in the face. These are not long drawn out bars that we have to cross.
Right.
This is just living in a civilization, living in a society. These are some of the rules that have been bent lately, with excuse after excuse being made for criminals, where citizens aren't being protected, where their rights are being taken away, and they're constantly being given to the criminals. And I don't know why they are doing this, but the fact is that New York seems to be the epicenter of it, where they are completely throwing their police officers under the bus. Hey, you're going to cowboy up and you're going to be a police officer. You deserve some respect. You deserve to be able to do your job, and you deserve not to be harassed and threatened with criminal action, because you are enforcing laws that these lawmakers are putting on the books.
It seems like
we're reaching out.
Does it seem to you like they're setting them up to fail?
Yes, it absolutely does. They put their lives on the line. They arrest these criminals, and in the very next day, liberal DAs like the ones in New York let them out. They don't even allow the police officers, once they've done their job, to sleep peacefully, because they know these same criminals are going to be out. And you're absolutely right. The murderer of Jonathan Diller, that is exactly what happened. These people were arrested time and time again for violent offenses, and they were just let go. They were just let out. And, I do not live in New York. I'm a Texan by choice. And one of the reasons why is because we actually have laws down here. We respect them. And as a result, we have low crime. And by the way, a higher quality of life for a much cheaper price tag.
Yeah, people understand. Talking with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, represents Texas's 24th district. People understand, there's going to be a consequence to breaking the law, or heaven forbid, squatting someone's house or punching someone in the face, in Texas. It's amazing that anyone even would wear the badge anymore, considering everything that they have to put up with. Not just, they're set up to fail, and then they have to bear the consequences, and sometimes fatally so, when from the inaction of politicians. I would imagine that there's not a lot of people wanting to wear the badge in New York. I read just last year their numbers had decreased in terms of recruits by like over 1,200. I don't even know what that looks like this year.
And that's, by the way, that's around the country. It's in Texas as well. We host a job fair, one of the largest job fairs in the state. We had nearly 16,000 people come last year to get a job, and we had a whole row of police departments, area police departments, that were looking to hire good people. Where they used to get hundreds of people that would apply for one job, they're now getting a lot less than that. And so they too are hungry for people to apply, and they need applicants. And so I'm not afraid to go outside the country. People who've already put their life on the line in other states who don't feel like they're getting the respect that they need, come on down. There's a reason why you're doing that job. There's a reason why you got called into, life of law enforcement, and you deserve to be able to do that. And come to Texas, because we have a lot of jobs. We've got a great standard of living, and we are welcoming to you, as opposed to, wanting to hold you accountable criminally, for simply doing your job.
And I know with everything going on, especially with our southern border right now, talking about enforcement, I wanted to ask you about this as well, because I know there's a budget battle. There's always a funding battle in the House. And it seems like now, I think, this month, Republicans have it's in effect now with Gallagher retiring, +1 majority. So it's even tighter. It is, I don't know if it's ever been this tough for Republicans, because you're the power of the purse. You don't have that backup in the White House. You definitely don't have the Senate. It's super close in the Senate. We're in the middle of an election season. I know that some people in purple districts are very, very nervous about things, but at the same time, you represent a district in Texas. You're looking at the southern border. You're seeing the deluge coming across that southern border, not just of bodies, but also of drugs, and how that's getting into the interior. What are you telling your fellow congressmen in D.C. as we are lurching towards this, another battle over this? I know that the GOP is kind of fighting with itself, but what are you telling your
It's a battle willing to have. It's a hill I'm willing to die on, to make sure that we actually get some security on our border. And, we talk about what's going on in these cities with these police officers. Well, you have sanctuary city policies, which do nothing more than incentivize folks to come here illegally and take advantage of those incentives. We can't afford it. We're adding $1 trillion every 90 to 100 days, another $1 trillion on top of an almost $35 trillion debt right now in our country. It is simply unsustainable. There's going to be a point in the next few years where we're paying more just to service our debt than we are on anything else. And you want to talk about a waste of money, and we cannot continue spending that. And so, there was a number of Republicans that got back. We had, our appropriations bills that just came through the last couple of weeks. I voted against them. And the reason why is not only were we increasing spending, normalizing the spending that we had during COVID, which was absolutely ridiculous, but we were not securing our border. And while the Biden administration wanted to add more money toward the border, they weren't changing the policies. It is the policies that have led to the complete disaster where we've had 10 to 11 million people illegally enter our country in the last 3.5 years that need to be changed. It needs to be changed back to the policies that were working under the Trump administration, whether or not that was the Remain in Mexico, whether or not that was continuing to build the wall, and not allowing people who were here, who were committing crimes, or allowing them to be not only detained, but then deported. This administration's taken that off the table. They've taken the Remain in Mexico off the table. They've added the CBP app where people can just apply over their phones and get into our country. And they've had massive parole release. It was always supposed to be a one-on-one, case-by-case basis. Instead, what Secretary Mayorkas has done, which is one of the reasons why I voted to impeach, is he's allowing mass parolees to come into our streets. And by the way, that's one who happened to murder a 22-year-old nursing student in Georgia. This cannot be allowed to stand. And unless this Congress, unless this administration is willing to take that seriously, we have the power of the purse, and I will continue to vote against those bills that do not address the border.
Last question for you, talking with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, my Congresswoman as well, Texas 24th District. You talked about the power of the purse, the Appropriations Committee. I know with Kay Granger leaving, they're look. Why don't you? I mean, has anyone suggested Congresswoman Van Duyne as the chair of the Appropriations Committee?
I'm not on the Appropriations Committee. I'm on Ways and Means, where 70% of our
I think they need you on Appropriations Committee because, I mean, unlike some of the Republicans in Congress, you actually understand economics, and I just feel Kane and I are both in agreement on this. I feel like that should be a thing, and maybe run Ways and Means too. I don't know, all of them.
Well, I'm looking at tax policy right now. I'm looking at healthcare. I'm looking at trade, holding Mexico's feet to the fire as they continue not only letting people cross our border, looking at fentanyl that's killed over 110,000 people, but also the jobs that they're taking and how they are not abiding by our current trade agreements. Those are all things that we could use had we had a strong, a chief in the White House. We could use that to force Mexico's hand to help us at the border and securing our border. But we obviously don't, which is why you've seen so much outbreak in foreign wars across the world, because we don't have a strong chief right now in the White House. And it's affecting not only, other areas in the Middle East and Europe, over in Ukraine, potentially Taiwan, but it's hurting us right here as we're having numbers of military-aged men, single men, come in through our border that are on the terrorist watch list, that are with the CCP, and are here to cause harm. And it's not if, but when. And unfortunately, until we get a stronger person, President Trump in November, somebody who will actually help our law enforcement and back them and support them. Until that happens, we're going to continue to see the lawlessness that has run rampant in the last 3.5 years.
And if, heaven forbid, there isn't a victory in November, y'all's job in Congress is going to get that much harder. I have never been less envious of a job in my whole life. Oh my word! And well, I mean, you're in the right spot because you're a tough woman. So you're right where you need to be, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. We appreciate you fighting the good fight in D.C. We appreciate your voice, and thank you so much for supporting law enforcement. And I feel like we're going to get some good recruits out of this from New York. So
I love it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm in touch with the chiefs. I'm like, let me know. Let me know when you get folks that are applying, because we need them down here. You take care. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, we'll take them down here. We'll love them. Take them down here. Absolutely. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, always a pleasure. Thanks so much. We'll talk with you again soon.